As a paying passenger, you would expect your flight crew to get you from point A to point B safely and on time, but that doesn't always happen. Sometimes a cascade of events occur, events which by themselves would not be any problem, but together result in aircraft repeatedly landing at the wrong airports. You land safely. The seatbelt sign dings off. You reach for your bags, and then the public address system crackles. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We appear to have landed at the wrong airport. It sounds impossible, but it keeps happening. It keeps occurring because both pilots believe their eyes when they are looking at an airport that is not, in fact, the airport that they are supposed to be going to. This is the result of something called confirmation bias. When confirmation bias occurs, the typical checks and balances that are carried out by pilots go by the wayside, and complacency takes over. For this reason, cross-checking the navigation display to the destination airport actually ceases. Let's look at some examples. Our first example is a massive 747 Dreamlifter that is on approach at night to McConnell Air Force Base in the state of Kansas. But instead of landing there, it lands at Jabara Airport, a much smaller airport 7 miles sooner. While the runway at Jabara is shorter, narrower, and not built for heavy jets, the runway happened to be preceding the other airport right along the jet's flight path. It also happened to be in the same direction as the much larger runway. With the nighttime arrival and the reduced visibility, the trifecta of factors was complete. The misidentification had occurred and confirmation bias had taken over. Why did this happen? Once the crew believed they had the runway in sight, every detail reinforced their belief, even though it wasn't true. It wasn't a technical failure at all. It was a perfect storm of human factors run amok. In our second incident in 2012, a U.S. Air Force C-17 Globemaster was cleared to land at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida. But instead, it mistakenly landed at Peter O. Knight Airport, a much smaller airfield just 5 miles away. Peter O. Knight has a 3,580-foot runway, barely long enough to accommodate a C-17. Fortunately, the aircraft did touch down and it stopped safely. The crew was elite, highly trained, but like the other crews, they were misled by their eyes. A trifecta of similarities deceived them. Again, it was evening. There was a runway that was in the same direction as the runway they were expecting to land on. The airport preceded their destination airport, and it was right along their flight path. When pilots believe they are right, it takes an extraordinary amount of evidence to undo false assumptions. And too often, that evidence only becomes obvious after the mistake has been made and is realized on the ground. In 2020, a A FedEx MD-10 freighter was on approach to Chattanooga Airport in Tennessee, but instead it landed 10 miles away at Hardwick Field, a small general aviation airport with a much shorter runway. How could this happen again? Again, the trifecta of causal factors appeared. Number one, it was nighttime. Number two, the runway was aligned in the same direction as the destination runway. And number three, the runway was located directly along the aircraft's flight path. The visual similarities were enough that confirmation bias took over again. The crew descended, lined up visually, and continued their arrival and landing to what they both believed was the correct airport. Remember what I mentioned earlier. When a visual approach is accepted, there is a tendency for complacency to take over, to relax, to stop questioning oneself and continue checking. The crew stopped verifying their distance to the correct airport with readily available data displayed right in front of them. They didn't confirm the correct airport with their navigation displays. Likewise, the radar controller's responsibility for getting them to their destination had been transferred over to the pilots when the pilots accepted a visual approach to what they believed was the correct airport. Here's another one. In 2014, a Southwest Airlines 737 was on final approach to Branson Airport in the state of Missouri when the crew landed at the wrong airport. The causal factors presented themselves again. Number one, it was nighttime. Number two, the incorrect airport preceded the destination airport and was right along the aircraft's flight path. And number three, the runway alignment was similar. The aircraft descended toward what the crew believed was the correct runway, and they landed safely. But they weren't at their destination airport. Instead, they were at Taney County Airport, 7 miles sooner. That runway was only 3,700 feet long, barely enough for a fully loaded 737 with 124 passengers. The crew applied reverse thrust and full brakes, and the aircraft stopped just 300 feet from the end of the runway. Again, how could this happen? Well, you've heard it all before. The smaller airport appeared first. It was aligned with the approach path to the destination airport, and the visuals looked right. Remember what I mentioned previously. When visual approaches are accepted, complacency tends to take over amongst pilots and amongst controllers. Relaxation takes over. Monitoring goes by the wayside. Checking goes by the wayside. The pilots stopped checking their navigation display. The pilots stopped verifying the airport identifier. Neither of them caught the mismatch. Likewise, the controller relaxed and stopped monitoring as closely what the aircraft was doing. These pilots were experienced, and they believed what they were seeing, but confirmation bias did the rest. If airline policies prohibited pilots from accepting visual approaches at night, this problem would be solved. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Over 70% of people who watch my videos don't,
and it goes a long ways towards helping me. Stay curious and stay safe.
Thanks for watching.